my foodies, and welcome to another edition of PJ Cooks Sexy Food. Today we are going to make something that is going to look sexy, going to taste sexy, but is definitely not going to make you look sexy. We are going to be making pierogi lasagna. Yes, that's right, two of everyone's favorite things. Potatoes, pasta. Oh my God, ultimate comfort food. So to begin, we're going to start with the ingredients list. Okay, so we're going to start with our ingredients list for our pierogi lasagna. First thing we're going to need is 5 pounds of russet potatoes, 4 large Spanish onions, 2 sticks of butter, 8 ounces of cream cheese, 16 ounces of sour cream, 1 quart of half and half, 6 ounces of sharp cheddar cheese on a regular shred, 6 ounces of finely shredded sharp cheddar cheese, 1 pound of lasagna noodles, salt, and pepper. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing we want to do is we want to slice up the 4 onions. Easiest way to slice an onion is take off the top, go to the bottom, cut off the little furry end. Now you have the onion nice and flat. Take your knife, go from pole to pole, straight through the onion. Peel off the outermost layer. It's usually easier to do without gloves, but I'm just using gloves today because I nicked my finger yesterday. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to cut out the core, taking your knife on a slight angle, going down through the onion, and you've just removed the core. You're going to do that to all 4 onions. So as you can see, I went ahead and I prepared all 4 onions by peeling them, slicing them in half, removing the core. Now what we're going to do is push the onions off to the side, and we're going to start slicing. We're going to slice the onion just like this. We're going to go from pole to pole, straight down, creating nice, even-sized pieces. When you get to a piece that's about this size, lay it on its side, and now you have another flat platform to slice. And we're going to go ahead and slice up all these onions. So as you can see, I went ahead and I sliced up all those onions. My eyes are tearing, but you know what? The end product is definitely going to be worth it. So the next step is now we're going to need to take a cast iron pan and put it on our burner over medium heat. So we have our cast iron pan over medium heat. We're going to now add a stick of butter and let that melt gently. Okay, now that our butter has melted and it's foamed up and it's stopped, now we're going to introduce our onions. Now I know this looks like a lot of onions, but this is going to cook down to a very small amount. We want this to get rich, caramelized, brown, and that's going to take a good 45 minutes at least on low heat. And while that is on low heat, we're going to give it a pinch of salt, a couple of grinds of pepper, and we're going to keep this on low heat. As I said, for a good 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to be stirring this every so often so it doesn't stick and so all the onions caramelize. We want this to cook down, and you'll see what this looks like when it is ready. Okay, so while our onions are caramelizing, I have a pot of cold water I'm going to put off to the side, and I'm going to begin peeling the potatoes. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and peel all. Our onions are cooking away nicely. Our potatoes are peeled. Now we're going to cube the potatoes, cut them in half again, and then we're going to dice them into equal size pieces. We want them to be equal size so that this way they all cook evenly. As we dice each potato, we're going to put it into a pot of cold water. So our potatoes are diced. We're going to cover them in cold water. Put them onto a high heat. Bring this up to a rolling boil and cook our potatoes until just tender with a pinch of salt. I'm going to move this over to the other burner, and I'm going to bring the onions over so you can see how they're doing. So our onions have been cooking for about 20 minutes. You can see how they've cooked down, how soft they've gotten, but they're nowhere near where we want them to be yet. We want them to be golden and delicious. So we're going to let this keep going. Our potatoes are on the heat. They're starting to simmer, and the next step is going to be to get another pot of water on the stove for our lasagna. It tastes like seawater. Once this comes up to a boil, we're going to put in our pasta, and we're going to let that cook until it is tender. Not al dente, we want it to be tender, because in this dish, we're not going to be having a lot of sauce for the noodles to continue cooking when we bake it in the oven. So it's going to need to be tender, so it just everything becomes together. We have our potatoes cooking, our onions cooking. Our pot of water is on for the lasagna noodles. Next, what we want to do is we want to heat up the dairy that we're going to use into the potatoes when the potatoes are done to make them nice and fluffy and mash them. So we're going to start with 1 stick of butter, the 8 ounces of cream cheese, the quart of half and half. Now, if you're lactose intolerant, this is going to kill you. As well as half the container of sour cream. We're going to put this on a low heat. And we're going to keep this on a low heat to get this up, not to a simmer, but we just want to have this heated through nicely. So that this way it'll be at the same temperature as our potatoes when we're going to combine them together later. So our potatoes have been boiling away for a little while now, and you can see they are just tender. They easily pierce with the paring knife. So now we're going to drain them. So I drain the potatoes. I have them put them back into the pot, have them off sitting on the side to cool down for a few moments. In the interim, I wanted to show you how our onions have been coming along. As you can see, they have this rich brown color. They're really soft, and they're basically broken down and falling apart. This is the exact way we wanted them to look. This is the state we wanted them in. So now we can put these on the side and get ready to rice our potatoes. This is a potato ricer. What it does is it actually mashes and breaks down our potatoes, makes them light and fluffy and grainy. I use this anytime I make gnocchi, mashed potatoes, anything along those lines. Now when you squeeze it, your potatoes are going to just come right out just like that. And we're going to continue doing this in batches till we have all the potatoes riced. So I went ahead and I riced the remaining potatoes. Now I'm going to pour in the half and half butter, sour cream, and cream cheese mixture that we heated up earlier. And we're going to add that to the potatoes. I'm going to start with about half and reserve the other half because I just want to see how it comes together. And we're going to stir it together because we want to make nice, fluffy, light, yet creamy mashed potatoes. Now you can make them as thick as you want or as thin as you want. I make them a little bit on the thinner side. Even though the pasta has been cooked and I'm going to cook it a little bit more than usual, it will absorb some more moisture. So this is almost where I want it to be. I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay, so right now it looks like I'm using about 3/4 of the half and half cream cheese, sour cream, and butter mixture. You want to make sure you thoroughly incorporate it. Make sure you scrape that bottom of the bowl. Okay, so that looks good. It's almost fully incorporated. Excellent. Now we want to taste for season. Go ahead and see if it needs any salt, which it definitely does, and it needs pepper. I'm going to go with about a tablespoon, maybe half a tablespoon to start, just to see how it goes. Stir that in. Now keep in mind, we are going to be adding the cheese, so that's going to add a little bit more salt to this as well. So we don't want to make it too salty, but we want to have it flavorful. So let's taste the salt level, see where we're at. Perfect. Doesn't need any more salt. Just need some pepper. I don't mind having the black specks in there. I kind of like it. Makes it look a little bit more rustic and a little bit more authentic. Shows that it was homemade. Beautiful. That should be just enough pepper for that. Stir that in. And then we're going to set this on the side and just let it cool for a little bit, because what we're going to do next is we're going to stir in some of that cheddar cheese that we have. Perfect. Potatoes are done. This wasn't in my original ingredient list, but I decided I wanted to gild the lily even more. So what I did is I took 3 egg yolks, and I'm going to add that into the mashed potatoes. That's going to add even more richness. It's going to make it a little bit more golden colored, and it's going to just make it taste even better. Now at this point, it is cooled down a bit. That's why I was able to add the egg yolks and not worry about them cooking right away. And then just before I'm going to assemble, I'm going to stir in that cheddar cheese that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to keep stirring this in, and I'll be back in just a few moments. Mashed potatoes are cooling, our onions are done, our pasta is still cooking. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, and we are going to generously lubricate the inside and grease it with butter. Yes, more butter. Isn't that more fun? Isn't that everybody's favorite word? Butter, cheese, potatoes, pasta. Oh, this is like heaven in a dish. This is one of my favorite things to make, and I hope you're going to enjoy this one. I know you're going to enjoy this one. So now our dish is ready. It's all prepared, nice and greased up. I'm going to preheat the oven now to 350 degrees while I wait for the pasta to finish cooking. So the pasta's fully cooked. The onions are cooked. Mashed potatoes are almost done. They've cooled down a bit. Now I'm going to take about 4 ounces of the finely shredded cheddar cheese. I'm going to mix that into the potatoes. Oh yeah. Nothing better than potatoes, cheese, pasta. Ultimate comfort food right here. Okay, so as you can see, the cheese is all nicely incorporated into the potatoes. We're going to set that aside. We have our onions in a bowl. We're going to set that on the side. We're going to bring back our baking dish that we buttered earlier. And we're going to start with our first layer of pasta on the bottom. And when we put it down, we want it to slightly overlap. So we're going to go with 4 pieces across. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a layer of mashed potato. You don't want to put it too thick because we're going to be making several layers, but you don't want to be chintzy either, so just eyeball it. Make it just the way that you like it. Okay. So the first layer of potatoes is on the pasta. I want to put a little bit more. And a little bit more. Now we want everything to show as layers when we slice into this. So that's why we want to do it this way. So the first layer is down. And then we're going to put on some of those beautiful caramelized onions that we did earlier. That's the next layer. And these onions are extremely sweet because they've been cooked low and slow. The sugar is caramelized, turning that beautiful brown. Just gonna smear them around. Make sure there's going to be onion in every single bite. Oh yeah. Might not look that pretty now, but trust me, this is going to taste amazing. Next, now we're going to give it a generous layer of the regular shredded cheddar cheese. Don't be chintzy. Okay. And then we're going to start the process all over again. 4 lasagna noodles overlapping. And we're going to continue all the way to the top of the pan. In between layers also, when you put your next layer of pasta, just give it a good push down because we want everything to be nicely tight and compacted. All right, and continue on. Right now I've done 3 layers of pasta, and this is the 3rd layer of pasta. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of doing it the other way, of putting the potatoes first, now I'm going to put the onions directly on top of the pasta. Just like that. This time now, I'm going to put the layer of potatoes now on top of that. Oh, that looks so good. And don't worry about getting it all nice and pretty on the edges. At the end, we'll go around, wipe it up, make it all look nice and neat. Right now, we just want to fill that in. With all that goodness. Okay. Move that off to the side. Grab a clean cloth or paper towel. Wipe the edges down. Oh, that looks so good. Almost there. And make sure it's all nice and clean, because if you don't clean it off now, when you go to bake it, anything that's on the pan is just going to burn and get nasty. Okay, and then the finishing touch is going to be the last bit of that finely shredded cheddar cheese. We're going to top this off with cheddar cheese. And don't be chintzy with the cheddar either on top, because this is going to bake, and when this browns and it cooks, it's going to turn into a beautiful crust on top. There we go. Now we're going to cover this with foil, tented, bake it in that 350-degree oven for about 30 minutes. Then we'll take the lid off, take the foil off, and then bake it for another 10 till it becomes golden brown. Okay, so that is now in the oven baking. Now, since we cooked a full pound of lasagna, we do have several noodles left over. In this case, I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 noodles left. I'm not letting those go to waste. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make pierogi lasagna roll-ups, which then can be placed on a sheet pan, popped into the freezer, frozen solid, put in a zip-top bag, and then can be used anytime in the future when you want something as a guilty pleasure, as a side dish. You can take one out per person as a nice side dish. It's wonderful. So we're going to lay them out, put a dollop of potato right up the middle, just like this. Just like this, and just like this. Give it a little smear to smooth it out. Perfect. Put a little onion right in the middle, or what will be the middle once you roll these up. And don't forget the cheddar cheese. Now, to cook these roll-ups from frozen, what you do is just put them in a little oven-safe dish, a little bit of water on the bottom, cover it with foil, pop it in the oven until they're heated through. Heat them till they're up to 165 degrees in the middle. Now, to roll them up, it's just as simple as taking the edge and roll. Give it a gentle press as you're doing so this way the potato spreads out. Give it a little pat, and now you have these beautiful little roll-ups for future use. And who doesn't love potatoes and pasta as a side dish? So I went ahead and I made all the roll-ups. This was the amount of mashed potato that was left, very little. But don't go digging into this thinking you can eat it as is. Remember, there's some raw egg yolk in there. So this you could either bring to a temperature, cook it up, or you could just discard it. These are the roll-ups that were made. Don't they look wonderful? I'm going to pop this tray into the freezer, let them freeze up, put them in a zip-top bag. And one other thing is, remember that leftover liquid that we had earlier? The milk, the cream cheese, sour cream, butter that we boiled up that we did not put into the potatoes. Pop it into a little plastic container. You can pop this into the freezer for the next time you're going to be making potatoes. Take that out, defrost it, bring it up to a low simmer, and you can add that right into your mashed potatoes. So right now, the mashed potato, the pierogi lasagna is in the oven. The roll-ups are in the freezer. The milk is going in the freezer. And we'll be back to show you what everything looks like when it's all done. Okay, so we just took the pierogi lasagna out of the oven. You can see how beautifully golden it is on top. And now we're going to let it rest for about 30 minutes for the layers to settle before we cut into it. And then we'll be able to serve. And now we plate. Piece of the pierogi lasagna. Dollop of sour cream right on top. Why not? Let's go with some crispy fried bacon strips. Some fresh, garden fresh chives. Oh yeah, that is sexy food.